for sale and for demo today is this really lovely 1967 Epiphone Riviera. The model is E360TD. I really love Rivieras. As most folks who collect guitars know, maybe you don't, Epiphone guitars in the 1960s were built by Gibson. They were made at the same factory by the same people, utilizing many of the same parts that their Gibson counterparts were. In fact, this body here is pretty much the same as ES335 from the era. So it's got a maple block, it's a semi-hollow guitar, got the patent number ABR1 bridge, wiring harnesses, all that stuff is the same. The difference, of course, is that this has mini humbuckers instead of the full-size humbuckers. It has a frequencator tailpiece with the split lengths, short for the bass, long for the treble strings. It's got a little bit different pickguard shape, and of course the headstock. It has that hourglass, because at this point they'd switch to the hourglass headstock. But you know, as far as like the other appointments, like the frets, the binding, finish, and all that, that's all Gibson stuff. Now, in the 70s they switched to Japan, and production quality went down with it. They're not terrible guitars, but they're not nowhere near like these. These are basically Gibson quality, American-made instruments. So anywhere from the late 50s throughout the 60s till about 1970, you've got American Kalamazoo-made guitars. Now, what Gibson did with Epiphone when they bought the company is that they basically took all the full lineup of Epiphone guitars and they made Gibson counterparts to them. So, for example, like in acoustics, you could buy some of the more decorative acoustics, like you had the Gibson Dove, right? Well, you had guitars like the Frontier and others like that kind of corresponded more to the Gibson Dove. I think the Frontier had maple back and sides as well as the Dove, okay, and the Hummingbird and all that. But especially with the electrics, instead of a Gibson SG, you could get like a Wilshire or a Crestwood. Instead of an ES 355, you could get a Sheraton, which was a really high-end guitar. And then instead of the ES 330, you could get the Epiphone Casino, which of course the Beatles made very, very famous. And that had P90s. And then instead of the 335, you could get a Riviera. And the Riviera, of course, had the mini humbuckers. So I love Epiphones from the 60s, especially the early 60s ones. Mid to late 60s are great too, but the early 60s ones are just really special and they're very rare. I have a few. So this is a great example of a 67. You know it's a 67 because it has a serial number that starts with a 0. If you have a Gibson with the right serial number from the 60s that starts with a 0, you're dealing with a 67. It's got the kind of embossed epsilon for Epiphone here on the pick guard. Early on it was just kind of a flat sticker. Here it's more of an embossed lifted logo. You got witch hat knobs, which are cool, come in the late 60s. Chrome parts on the pickups and the bridge, on the tailpiece. And this has double line Clouson tuners with the metal buttons. Okay, it's not a mint guitar, but it's really not in terrible shape. As you can see, the top is pretty clean. It's got a few little marks here and there. On the back, there's a little bit of worming and some scratches, but you know, nothing horrendous. Nothing really to write home about. A little bit of like a mark there on the top of the headstock, and just a tad bit of fretwear. But you know, other than that, you know, it's really not too bad. It doesn't have an original case, but it has an older Gibson branded hard case that has the shroud, pink shroud over the top, and fluffy lining in there. It's missing a latch. It's seen some use, but it's great. So again, I think this guitar sounds great. I'm playing through a brown face Fender, a Fender Vibroverb. It's a little bit darker circuit. After I made the video, I think I probably would have turned the treble up a little bit, but these are very nice, clear, full, round sounding pickups. They're really, really nice. Well, if you've watched this far, just one extra tip for you. The best place for you to buy this guitar to get the best price at checkout is on my website. And if you click the link below the YouTube video description, just go to the YouTube page if you're not there and look at the description. You'll see a link to my website, and you can contact me if you have questions about the guitar. If you buy it on the website, you're not in Washington State, you won't be charged sales tax at checkout, which will save you a lot of money, at least at checkout. Depending on what state you're in, it could be quite a bit, up to 10%. Now, you need to be aware of whatever use tax or whatever laws you have in your state, but for me, as a small business, I'm not required up to a certain threshold. I don't have to charge that at checkout. So please check out the website. You'll get the best deal you can on the guitar. And I think you'll be pretty happy with this 1967 Epiphone Riviera. Oh, one other thing that I mentioned, I'm sure I'll get a question about. It's got the narrower nut width, 1 9/16 inch. Epiphone went to that a little sooner than Gibson. You start to see it narrower nuts after 63, whereas in Gibson it's not till after 65. Nevertheless, medium profile neck, very nice sounding guitar. I'm sure you'll like it if you want to buy it. Thanks for checking it out.